He's on the way.
Oh, okay. You want me to get started?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys want to, we can wait on we'll get started.
It's up to y'all. Some of this might be, in the beginning, might be a little rudimentary, but I could just give you a rundown of how the previous SPLOST was approved and what the difference is on this one.
So we go ahead and call it to order and we'll get started. We'll do that.
What's that?
I'll ready to call the meeting.
Yeah, I go ahead.
Oh, yeah,
Call
okay.
to order.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Effingham County Board of Commissioners. It is now 3:42 p.m. on May the 4th. At this point, I'll turn it over to Tim Calvin.
Okay. So this is basically a rundown of the SPLOST renewal process. And then staff had just kind of come up with a whole list of recommendations that we can then pare down based on the projects that the board believes should be the most helpful for the county. So if we start to look at what we have, we currently are at the almost at the final year of a 5-year SPLOST that was passed in 2017. Is that right? Yeah, and it will end in June of next year. Because of the limits on when you can have an election for these, the only time we'd be able to do it, to renew it without interruption, would be on this November's election. There is no countywide election this November, but there are municipal elections, and we can simply do it on the same day as that occurs. The total estimated proceeds, and this is taking into account on how much we're receiving now on a monthly and yearly basis, and what we estimate that could potentially grow to is about $65 million. We are recommending that we do it a little bit differently this time around than we did 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we limited our take to the just to the unincorporated city project. So we basically took the grand total, divided it out by the percentage of populations for unincorporated and the 3 cities, and divided the money by them. The problem with that is we've used a portion of our SPLOST funds for countywide service capital expenditures, and the one that comes to mind is the administration building. Well, that's not simply used by the unincorporated residents, that's used as the county as a whole. And so there are a lot of those projects that come to mind when this SPLOST comes up. So what we're recommending this time around is we do an option where we can use 20% of the total proceeds for Tier 2 projects. And those are county-wide projects, really as determined by the service delivery agreements. And then the remainder, that 80% that's remaining, is then divided up amongst the unincorporated area of the municipalities. So if you took that $65 million, the 20% of that would be $13 million. So that would be $13 million going towards the county-wide projects, and then took what approximately is about 74.5%, which is the most recent estimate we have right now, would go towards the unincorporated area, which is about $38,750,000. The rest, based on a percentage of population, Rankin 8.8 million, City of Guyton 1.5 million, and City of Springfield 2.8 million. This is the timeline. Some of it we've already started. I've had a conference call with the city managers to let them know that the time to renew is this November. I informed them that it was the county's intent this time around to include some countywide projects in that, or tier 2 projects. We discussed this briefly, some of the projects, and you'll see them on the list at the retreat. We then took some of that feedback, created an overall staff list. Lee right now is working on a SPLOST resolution template, which essentially will include everything in there but the project percentages or category percentages. Then that brings us into today. One of the requirements under state law is that you have to have a city meeting. Those invitations went out last week or the week before to occur on May 18th, and I'm going to think it's at 11 a.m. It's immediately following the Transportation Advisory Board meeting, which a lot of the attendees would be there anyway. From there, I'll have some follow-up meetings in June and early July. We'll figure out, kind of the final category list, and you'll see what I mean on the next thing, on the next slide. Then we'll have a final resolution for approval. We have to get that draft approved, and the call for referendum approved and into the elections office before August 31st to meet the election day deadline of November 2nd. That has to include the city's percentages as well. This does not require an IGA the way that we're doing it. If you did the IGA, you could get another year out of the SPLOST. But the complications with getting IGAs just would have potentially blew up our timeline. And so we are kind of bypassing that, and we're just going to get from the cities their percentages of projects. And when I say percentages, this is from 2017, how we did it. So it doesn't necessarily list out specific projects, although we can reference internally what projects we're talking about.
Tim,
yes.
1 second. The allocations you had earlier, are they based on the latest census, or what are they based on?
No, they are, unfortunately, the latest numbers we have from the census is 2019. 2020 numbers didn't come out because they skipped that in lieu of the actual census numbers, which have been delayed until September 30th. I'm assuming we're probably going to have to use those 2019 numbers. Or we could do what we did in T-SPLOST, is simply said we're going to use the 2019 numbers until for the first year, and then when the new numbers come in the following year, we'll use the updated numbers. That's one other option that we could do. But I'll have to review that. So this is basically how we put it on the call for referendum. We just broke down the projects into categories, and we really overestimated how much we bring in last time. For some reason, we put a $70 million figure up there. We wouldn't even collect $70 million if we started it this year, 5 years later. But these were the percentages that we're using. So we then take the projects that we all agree on, divide them up into separate categories, and come up with a list, and that's what we approve.
Has there been any discussion yet with the municipalities about the 20%?
Yes. I brought it up to at least twice in my meetings with the city of Rankin, and at least once with each of the other managers. But one thing I did tell them is we will be providing them with a list of projects that we're going to be including in the Tier 2. So there won't be any question that those are actual countywide expenditures. So this is just my disclaimer, just saying that these are just general ideas that we have. The ultimate list would be up to all of you. And one of the things that we've tried to do is based on the expense associated with building new structures. We try to use the square footage that we have already and renovate it because the cost savings is going to be substantial on that. And one of the other things that we try to do is really take a look at all of our departments and use this as an opportunity to put departments in logical campus or complex locations where they make the most sense. The first example is the administration complex, right? We're trying to create a one-stop shop for everybody to come in for most of the items that they have to go to government for. And so we're creating the separate campuses based on the focus that they provide. And the first one is the administration complex. So when we put the directory up there, this is really after everything is done. This is after the bank moves out. This is after if T-SPOS is approved and this is a project. This is the view of what would be included in there. Building 1, which is the building that's currently under construction right now, which is this one. That one will have finance department, human resources, development services, environmental health, the commissioner's meeting room, the replacement for where we are here, and a large conference and training room. The second building will house in the bank area. The thought is to have the tax assessor, the tax commissioner, then the GIS department. We would essentially look at taking this five-bay drive-through that we obviously don't need as an administrative building. We can pick up 1,500 square foot and use the existing roof line and foundation on that, and have the assessor, tax commissioner, and GIS in that first floor. On the second floor, which we're working on right now, would be the county manager, the county clerk's office, the Board of Commissioners office, a small conference room for you folks to meet folks in, and for that we could do department head video conference meetings in, and the purchasing department, which is Allison, who is just kind of a one-person department that falls under the county manager, and we are literally moving into this building using every inch that we have. So,
how do we feel about parking?
What's that?
How do we feel about parking?
Parking's one thing we're not worried about because of, here, let me get you a better view of it. Because we've got all of this angled parking behind here, and that's really where we're going to have staff park and put some of the motor pool vehicles. We then have a second lane of parking back here, as well as around these two sides, which we're going to try and leave for citizens when they come into the office as best we can.
You would pick up, if you closed in the drive-through, you could pretty much pick up parking on either side of that.
That's exactly right. That's what the intent is,
Yeah.
on this side and this side.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, we have this portion of the parcel right here. And, we've reached out to the owner of this, have not heard back anything yet. But that always is an area for future expansion, if need be. Any questions about the administration building? So the next is where the annex is, 119. We've kind of come up with a concept of a health and human services complex. The Department of Health is obviously already there, but our thought is to take the old Academy building, which is about 17,000 square feet, and simply gut it and rebuild the inside. Does need a new roof. And that would essentially, it's almost divided in two, or maybe 2/3, 1/3. So having 2/3 of it be a relocation of DFACs. Now, I mentioned to DFACs the potential about this over a year ago because they needed upgrades in their existing facility. They were interested, however, it really isn't up to them, it's up to really the state and their procurement policy of where they're located. But it would be an interesting combination so that if you could essentially have the Department of Health, DFACs, our NPO partners, which are concerted services, Family Connection, Victim Witness Assistance, the library, UGA, extension, which we're looking about the other third of the annex building, the Academy building, with the 4-H office. They mentioned that they traditionally are located with the USDA Natural Resources and Conservation Service. We could look at renting them space in there as well, so they're close by UGA. And then, of course, our gym, which could be used by UGA, and then all the recreation facilities. Something else that came up recently, if there's space, Two Rivers had mentioned the possibility of potentially leasing the need for some space from us. And if we can, the thought is initially is that if you take the old rec building, which I'll go to where rec is on the next slide, and include concerted services, Family Connection, Victim Witness Assistance, and Two Rivers in there, it might be a nice use of that 6,000 square feet.
Now, isn't Two Rivers a private entity?
So is some of these other entities, so we'd essentially be leasing out space to them. And by the way, DFACS is leasing out space to us as well. But we view them kind of as good partners for providing coordination of services and benefits. And so if we were to break that up into tier 2 projects, DFACS potentially is, although we could potentially finance the improvements with DFACS with the lease payments. UGA definitely is a countywide service that we offer. These are not in red, but Victim Witness would be, would fall in there as well, Victim Witness Assistance. And so those would be potential for that 20%, the ones not in red. Unincorporated portion, if there are some needs to upgrade let's say the gym flooring, we are doing some of the lights right now out here in the fields, but there are some needs of lightings, restrooms, concession stand renovations, playground equipment, although I think we started doing that already, didn't we? Out there?
Right.
Yeah. But those are things that we could look at as unincorporated projects under SPLOST. There's an overall look at the campus, and a lot of it would fall, into creating paved parking lots, kind of cleaning up around here, really neatening up the building, making it look a lot more presentable than it does right now, and just making the kind of this front area of the campus a lot more usable. Judicial. And so this essentially, with the exception of this piece of property right here, is all publicly owned in one way, shape, or form. This property is owned by the Effingham County Historical Society. Did I get that right, Reggie?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's where we are right now. You have clerk of court, superior court, state court, juvenile court, accountability court, which is drug court, magistrate, grand jury, solicitor, district attorney, public defenders, probate, probation. Juvenile Justice Services, ones we're looking potentially moving there. Teal House, coincidentally, we met with them today with the chairman and the sheriff. And the Jailhouse Museum is also on that campus. Right now, the Jailhouse Museum is right here. The county owns this piece of property next to it, but the city of Springfield owns all this, but it's really being utilized by the Historical Society. So Tier 2 potential projects is probate court offices. This came up because we're actually renovating their space right now, but that could potentially be used by another entity because it's generally just a generic update for security purposes. But there was a state law that had the potential of passing this year, which could have increased their volume substantially and required, with regards to issuing gun permits. So there was discussion of potentially moving them into some of the tax commissioner space in the historic courthouse. State court has conceded some interest in moving their operations from the courthouse, the new judicial center, to the historic courthouse. That would also involve moving the solicitor's office, because once we move the tax commissioner and tax assessor out of there, there will obviously be some vacant space in there that we can grow into. And then since if you look at the historic courtroom, state court might be a good fit there because it's probably one of the least intensive courts that we have. It does not get anywhere near the volume of magistrate, superior, or juvenile. If we can get that to work without interrupting any of its historical integrity, that would potentially be a great space for them to operate in. The former Development Services building, when Development Services move into the new admin building, we'd like to get probation back into there for security reasons. We're actually coming up with a plan to do that. And then this is a little bit more of a stretch, and it's all dependent on what we can do with DFAX, with the DFAX building, which is over here. Juvenile court, even though it's one of the more recent additions to our county court system, is by far the busiest of the courts that we have. It's using the superior courtrooms more than any of the others. So the thought potentially would be to move juvenile justice services from the annex campus, combine it with juvenile court in this building right here, in the old DFAX building, which would just need renovation, but structurally it's a good building. It's got a metal roof. All we got to do is really fix the inside. And then there are some AV security, audio, video, and security upgrades. Some of them we could potentially look at using American Rescue Plan money from before this. But I think, again, with this campus parking lot and landscaping is going to play a key role. And I'll show you what I mean there. These are the kind of, if we were to include unincorporated projects in this, the Jailhouse Museum would fit in there. The History Park, although that's currently Springfield property, and that Courthouse Plaza Park out front, which I'll show you in a second. Actually, let me show you on this one. So right here is where the old probation office is, and right here is where Development Services is. This area back here is relatively flat ground. The probation building has a mold issue. It's going to require fairly intensive remediation. Our recommendation, because of the needing of additional parking, would be to level that building and use that space all the way back to here, and then behind the Development Services building, essentially to the house that's owned by the historic Effingham Society, into additional courthouse parking or judicial complex parking. The park, and then we could also use this area here, which is in front of the defects, if it is in fact turned to use for judicial court or juvenile justice services. We could also include additional parking here to pretty much match what we have on the other side with that linear park right in the center, which is very similar to what the plan that Hussey Gay Bell did for you prior to me arriving here when we were all looking at a location for a new administration building. But that's the judicial complex. Central School Complex. This is the one that is a little more ambitious. The interesting thing about Central School is we have 60,000 square feet under roof, excluding the mobile classrooms. So if you got rid of the mobile classrooms, you've got 60,000 square feet under roof. The thought was that the elections office had asked for additional space. The problem with their building is the way that they want it to go really goes against the pre-engineered building roof line. And it really become very expensive to expand the way they want to expand it. And we can't expand it going the other way because that building is basically on a cliff. And so if we looked at the Central School and what the possibilities are, it actually could potentially work very well for several purposes for the county. One of them is Board of Elections and Registration. The second is Facilities and Maintenance Department. They are currently in the basement of the courthouse, which does not work well at all when they want to operate a workshop or use drills because they can't use it while court's in session. And then we also need to finally find some place where we can have conditioned central record retention and storage rather than kind of bouncing our records into offices that we're currently not using. This would be a more organized system. And a lot of this would fall into the Tier 2 project list. Certainly the Board of Elections, certainly facility maintenance could, because they handle some of the county-wide judicial buildings. So a portion of that, you know, we could put there under a Tier 2 project. Central records retention and storage. Nearly all of those records are related to countywide service departments, courts, elections, Stephanie's records. And so that really is would fall within the countywide. Again, parking lot fencing, signage, and storage for the campus for those uses. And even if we were to use all of those, we still have what's called the newer building there, 18,000 square feet yet to be allocated. So there potentially, if we reinvigorate this campus, we'd have room to grow there. Unincorporated projects, we could do some work on the gym. Oops. We've already done the floors. They look fantastic there. And there's some potential for some work with the stands and the remaining of the interior. The interesting concept as well, which if any of you have discussed this with Dr. Franklin Goldwire, you know his interest in this school, particularly with regards with its history and construction as being built as an equalization school. And the thought is to include in there basically a space that have multiple use, where schools can go in there and do field trips and learn about the process, why the school was built, the history behind it. But also, when it's not being used for that purpose, can be used as a kind of a community center for events and so on and so forth, but the county really doesn't have a lot of. I've asked our friend Charlie just to kind of give us a rundown of what a floor plan could potentially look like on this. And so you take that area in between the gym and what was the cafeteria and the offices over here, and that essentially is a paved parking lot, which is the big problem with the elections office right now. When they have early voting, we paved the parking lot for them, but it's only about 20 spots, and it just is not enough for the amount of early voting you get. So you get folks who are parking on 119, climbing up the hill. It's kind of a dangerous situation. This immediately would double, easily double that amount of parking for early voting, and also over here provide potential unpaved overflow parking as well. The area where the cafeteria used to be is the area that we were thinking could be the community center / museum, which one of the little classrooms right here could be set up as a prototype classroom for museum purposes. But most of this would just be a large open space, about 6,000 square feet, that could really be used as events. The historical marker is right here. Would allow us to kind of put a little bit of a park right in front of it, since we'd be getting rid of the driveway. Before we get into elections, I'll just go over how we have everything else set up. One of the things about historic buildings, and this is a state historic building, is they generally like to keep the exterior appearance of it, and these uses would not disturb that really at all. It would just kind of clean it up, make it look nice. This area in here, in back of the museum, would just be kind of a green space. Then you have these rows of classrooms here and here. Entering from this location here, it creates a secure storage area so that you can enter these buildings from the center area right here. The individual classrooms are all separately, have separate HVAC and conditioning systems. So it really bodes well for being used as a storage facility, because they have that segregated AC, heating, cooling systems in there already. So here's the interesting part about elections. Elections needs two things. They need storage, conditioned storage, that is close proximity to their office on the same in the same facility. And they need offices, and they need a space, an adequate space for advanced voting. We could use this front area right here as your conditioned storage space. It would be about 5,000 square feet. We can then create a separate entrance, not off of Wallace Drive, and I'm not quite remembering what street this is, but off of this street right here, really for employees to get into their office right here, which would give them 5,000 square feet of office space to use from, that they could actually include this to really get them up to about 6,400 square feet if they needed that much space. The interesting thing comes about when you think about early voting. If you took the gymnasium offline for that 2-week period that we have early voting, to use it for that purpose, you would then have this entire parking space to be used by the advanced voting for the voters. There's an exit right here. You could essentially have folks park here. There is a covered, kind of a covered outside area starting here, that then goes here, that goes all the way into the gym. So they could essentially start queuing here, still be covered from the elements, go here, and then have plenty of room to queue up if the lines continued inside the gymnasium, where the precinct, my guess, my thought, and we have to discuss this with the election boards, is to have the actual early voting precinct here, so they can exit out here into the parking lot which they originated from. That all that really requires is a lot of the roofs here are still in pretty good shape with the exception of sections. The section over the cafeteria, the media center, and I think there's a small space over here. Those are in need of replace, but from what we're seeing, the roofs are in pretty good shape. And so this space is centrally located, and essentially could be put back into circulation for the county at a fraction of a cost of what building new would be. And then that leaves what essentially is the newest building, which is the classrooms that are all entered from the inside, 18,000 square feet, to be utilized for some other purpose when that purpose arrives. For now, we can probably use it as storage or transition, emergency office in case we have to vacate an office for some reason, and that will leave a nice big fenced-in, kind of equipment area behind facilities that we could put right here.
Did you say, have you mentioned anything yet to Board of Elections?
Here's what I mentioned to Board of Elections, because the last thing I wanted to do is kind of spring it on them before it's sprung it on you. And so I did mention to them that we looked at their building and that the feasibility of expanding that building at that location might not be in the best use of taxpayer money. And that we were going to look at, potentially closely low proximity relocation points for them. So that this is something that intrigues you, I can kind of bring it up to them. The trouble that we have with this campus is a lot of folks don't see this, they'll see this, right? Something that needs a lot of work, and they have to kind of get to the point that we're going to say, well, we're going to put a lot of work into this. We're going to make this look like a great place that you want to come to work or go to a museum or have a birthday party in the Equalization Museum. But it does come into play that if you don't have the vision, it's going to be kind of hard to get folks above that hurdle. And so that's one of the reasons why I asked Charlie to create this is, so kind of put something in front of you all to, that, really makes sense. But that's that's central. And Clarence Morgan Complex. We're not talking about a tremendous amount of change, but originally we're going to include offices and recreation, kind of flex space for events and stuff like that. As part of the original gymnasium that got taken away. It ends up, when we took it away out of the plans, they did it in a way that it could be added back without really any sort of structural changes to the building at all. And it would really make sense for a few purposes here, and I'll show you in a minute. So it would require relocating all of the Recreation and Sports Department offices to the new gymnasium, have the EMA department, which is currently at the MAC, relocate to here, and have the Emergency Operations Center located here as well. As you know, Parks and Landscaping already has their facility here. But let me show you what that looks like. So these are kind of what could fall in line in the Tier 2 projects. EMA is a countywide department, so anything that's really associated could be there. And so it would really require a backup generator, which we've already included kind of the wiring or the hookup as part of the construction in there. But then when you look at, this is a little hard to look at, but this is the existing gym and where it ends right now, right? This is the limit of the rec offices right here. This is the kitchen. So here's the exit out the side here and the exit out the side here. We use the existing wall, the existing exit. You're kind of leaning a wall off the side there. Our current problem with the EOC, we don't use it that often, and it's too small when we do use it. And so
we would not use the EOC anymore?
not the existing one at the MAC, but I do have a repurpose for it.
But I thought that was built to a certain spec.
That's right, you build,
And use it.
right, whenever you build a 911 facility, police facility, emergency operations facility, you gotta build it to Cat 5 specs, which we could build this section to. So even though the building may be, built to be a shelter or what have you, it's not built, it may not be built to Cat 5, it's not built to Cat 5 specs, but the addition can be.
Well, not to be difficult, but are we going to get pushback from the state or the feds that, hey, we're building this attached onto a building that the other portion is not?
Not according to the architect.
Okay.
So as long as you have your operations facilities here, and they're clearly separated, this could be, act as an independent Cat 5 rated facility. And so where this comes to play, why it might be a better utilization of space is A, it gets our rec offices in one space where they need to be at the complex, which would be this space right here. But as I mentioned, the EOC is rarely used and it's not big enough. So, we can use these spaces that when they're not being used as an EOC could be event spaces. And when the EOC gets activated, it's all wired, pre-wired, ready to go. The equipment and furniture then can go into these 3 partitioned rooms and activate as our EOC. Rather than just having a big room that sits there empty, it could not be activated in a year or 2. I mean, where I came from, there was a time where ours didn't get activated for 4 years. You're actually being able to utilize that space until it's needed. And then you would be able to then simply have back here, EMA is maybe a 1-2 person department. You wouldn't need that many offices for them. And then you'd have adequate storage for the EOC equipment and EOC equipment and materials that you potentially need. But the interesting thing about it is, so let's say the storm's coming and you've got things, most of the time when you're activated, the storm's not here. And 99% of your time that it's activated, the storm is not over you. In those times, you can continue to use things like the kitchen, the showers, the bathrooms of this facility, and which are needed in an EOC. And then when the storms comes, that's when you're essentially hunkered down into here, and that facility is set up as a Cat 5 facility. So it solves our EOC size problem, and it's the one thing. It is the one thing that I'm showing you is going to require new construction. Everything else that I'm showing you really requires renovation of existing space. And then after that, those are your kind of tier 2 items, is of course the completion or substantial completion of the park itself. This is the old layout. This is going to have to be re-looked at because needs have changed. One of the things we're probably talking less baseball fields, more soccer fields. And a few other changes in there as well based on what today's needs are, not what the needs were 5 years ago. These are the things that Clarence and his board kind of came up as potential things that we could include in there. But you will see that most of them were in the original plan, just a few more soccer, football, lacrosse fields. Pickleball probably wasn't even on anybody's radar 5 years ago, but it's the, I don't know if you've ever walked outside the back door here, but that court is nearly always full. So we are going to go into the additional parks later, but just to give you an idea, since we're talking about Clarence Morgan, who was also involved, the completion of this, which is always kind of a big seller for folks. And that's where it stands today, so just be finishing up here, and that's Ralph Brown Road. Public safety, really not doing anything here, but just to show you that this is another campus. And here's why potentially moving the EOC makes sense. We have to move, the only one left in this building is going to be IT. And the struggle about moving IT is what has to go with IT. The backup generators, the servers, the secure lines, the redundant lines that go into this facility would have to then follow them into another facility and would be extremely expensive to replicate somewhere. We certainly don't have it in our new administration building. That's all there in the map. We wouldn't have to do anything, really. Just if you took the small space that's allocated for the EOC right now, took two of those offices and you essentially used some of the bullpen as cubicle for IT, which is a growing department. It's secure. We can move our servers in there. It's got UPS, diesel generators. It's directly on our fiber, and it's extremely secure. So as much as it would cost to add to the gymnasium, there is also a cost savings by moving IT in there rather than building them a new location or retrofitting a location for them. But these are just the other things that are there. So, and we'd also be moving all of our servers in there as well, and there's plenty of location for that to do. Law enforcement campus, not a lot that we're talking about here. I think the sheriff is looking at an additional storage building, and the prison is looking at rebuilding this building over here, which was damaged due to fire. And so our thought is to kind of put two duplicate buildings side by side, metal buildings side by side here and here, and that will serve both purposes.
What are those buildings for?
What's that?
What are those buildings for? What are those buildings for?
This one, so the sheriff uses his mostly for storage. It wouldn't be that big of a building. This one, if we follow the existing footprint, they do use that as kind of a machine shop, and for to kind of keep them busy on some of the small engine stuff that they've been working on. So they've been trying to reoccupy it, but I've kind of had to kick them out because it doesn't have power or anything like that. But they need space outside of the prison walls to kind of do that work for the equipment. And another big ticket item for the sheriff is the camera system for the jail. Prison, I think, was recently upgraded. The jail is about the end of its life cycle. We can use the existing wiring should be fine. It's just that the cameras and the backup, the network video service, and so on and so forth are in need of an upgrade, and that gets very expensive. Over $100,000. And then the other need is a paved road, and you'll see this on the next one. The road right now stops right here, then it becomes dirt until it gets to the Public Works campus. Right here is where it goes in there. love to clean up this campus. And one of the things we want to get back to using is upgrading our fuel system. We're speaking with contractors right now on that. Certainly with the cost of fuel rising, we can save a substantial amount per gallon if we put a secure system in here, which we don't have now, which is why we're not actively using it. If we put a secure system in here and start filling up most of the county fleet from there. And then
We're not able to lock our rate in now? You have to have a secure system?
I wish. I mean, we, even if we were to, you're talking about the cost of fuel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the longest,
Customers, they're able to do that.
Yeah.
They have a secure system.
but they'll also do it for, they don't, it doesn't go out that far. So the futures will, maybe go out, I think 6 months is the longest you get. The most active is generally about a 3-month contract. And so right now, we're really not buying fuel to make it worthwhile to lock in our contracts because we're going to, the local parkers and using the WEX card and paying 30 cents more per gallon in the process. And so if we'd have everybody here, we'd be able to realize all that savings.
So this will be every vehicle.
What?
If you're in a pickup truck or a car, you would fuel there.
That's right, unless you're like a sheriff's deputy, who's got a patrol zone in like Egypt or down by 16 or something. Those, they're gonna be more common. They're not gonna make sense to drive all the way back there to fill up and burn a half tank of gas. So, for what I estimate to be about like between 75% to potentially 80% of the fleet could, by policy, be required to fill up there. We could end up saving some money, but it is going to require kind of cleaning up the campus a little bit because probably paving some of these driveways, which I think is going to be good. Right now, the way Public Works operates, EOM operates, they're just kind of dumping material where they have space, and you can kind of see these little piles here. Our thought is to get the push bays here for all material storage, clean this up so it's it's the asphalt road continues from the sheriff's office right to the fuel bay and then right out to 119. So that's really just kind of a retweaking of the campus and cleaning up the campus. Not a tremendous amount of expense associated here. But one of the things we want to do with animal services is right now we just put a new roof on this. It's still the same amount of space. There's a need kind of for more of an adoption center and administration offices. And so our thought is to do this, is to have the existing facility set up as your intake. When the humane officers come in, they can put, that's still where the animals are going to go. When animals are non-adoptable, they're in quarantine, they're being held because, once they catch an animal, there's a holding period before they can adopt it. Or they're court ordered to stay there. They can all continue to stay here. We can have the clinic here as well. But when it comes to adoptable animals and when it comes to a facility for the public to come, administration offices, if elections vacates this office here, we've got a 6,000 square foot building that could be easily kind of re-skinned and it's a metal building, so it can easily be reconfigured inside for that purpose, which would also be front and center for the public to see, and it would also have a nice new parking lot right next to it that we did last year. And you can really do that for a de minimis amount of money compared to building a new animal shelter. So it just kind of be dividing the focus of each building right across the street from each other. I did look, and Greenville did something very similar to this, and they actually took an old metal building for that purpose and did that, and ended up looking fantastic. Tier 2, again, most of it's related to animal shelter, where you're basically converting the elections office to the adoption center, this to the clinic. And we could also expand to have kind of an animal run back here. Sometimes, rarely, we'll get, a livestock or something like that that we'll have to take in and find a home for. This could potentially be a temporary stopping point for that. There's enough kind of land in there if we fenced in there. This is the public works part. It really falls into the unincorporated. And so that would just really involve using the unincorporated pot of money, but outside of paving and cleaning up and the cement push base, it's really not a lot of expense associated with that. But it would look a lot nicer, and hopefully with our new vehicle policy, we'll be eliminating this parking lot of zombie vehicles as well soon. The medical campus, and I just include this in there simply because EMS is located there. But if you look at everything as a complex, this certainly is another complex for us. The hospital technically is a sub-facility. What am I thinking of, Christy? The hospital, what relationship is it with us? Component unit, thank you. It is a component unit of the county, but that's also where EMS and Lifestar is located. They are in need of, and we've already started some of the architecture work on this, additional covered bays for their spares, which are currently outside, a large training room, office expansion, EMS again, and conditioned storage. EMS again is a countywide service, so that would all fall under Tier 2. There is probably a need when you talk about new EMS locations, the Rincon area, particularly somewhere around like 9th Street, where the old school is, would be a good location to have an additional EMS station as well, just simply to cut down our response times. And this is kind of where we were looking at. That's 9th Street right there. Is that right? No, that's 9th Street. Wait. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is 9th. And there are some places that are for sale around here that, may work out. But, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're looking location-wise. Parks, and I'll be quick on this. I know this is a long one. Clio Community Center, I've asked Clarence to kind of come up with what the needs are. Just some updates in the community center itself and the basketball courts. Tommy Long boat landing, possibly some improvements up here. It's very popular, particularly with the kayakers, and on weekends it's becoming one of our more attended tourist destinations. Using this, going out to Savannah, or using Longbridge and to launch in there and then coming out here. So there's this yellow area is a piece of property that's for sale, but we could also expand our existing property to include a small park area as well. Abercorn Landing, this one I know we've discussed. It's got some potential that if we wanted to look at expansion. This tiny little circle right here, that's the extent of Abercorn Landing for us. This property right here is mitigation property owned and controlled by GDOT. This property right here is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's the Savannah National Wildlife Refuge. This is privately owned, that we could potentially talk to the owner about expanding parking for this, and potentially talking to GDOT to see about using this as passive rec, walking trails, that sort of thing, using this area, setting up facilities for more boat parking and restroom, picnic tables, and so on and so forth.
Who owns the piece just above our little, right there?
This one?
Yes.
This is the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
But that is kind of wet. There's a little bit of a dry piece right here.
Gotcha.
This is really the target property. And then this is all dry up here if we can get the GDOT to have some sort of joint use agreement on it. Could be a very valuable asset to our park system with the existing land that's already there.
I'd like to see something happen there with our land.
What's unique about it is it's really the only piece of tidal water in the county with public access, so it's unique for everyone.
McCall Park. I think I've sent y'all a copy of the concept plan or the plan that's out for bid right now. But if there's and the way that that's set up is we kind of have a fixed amount of money. And if it comes in higher to get everything done, we could adjust it. But if it comes in much higher, we may want to do it in phases. So if we do it in phases, we can just finish off the concept as part of SPLOST. But that park is using every inch available to it for recreation. So small and large dog park, small multi-purpose field here, existing baseball field, new fencing, walking trail around it all. That is a full basketball court, playground, pavilion, bathroom. We're putting a well in there, so we'll be able to have irrigation for it all. Sand Hill, there's a lot of potential out here, a good amount of land. Obviously, the number one complaint I get has to do with parking. So let's come up with a permanent parking solution on the old, helicopter landing pads over here. An additional soccer field, pavilions. It doesn't show here, but this is where the new basketball court is and the batting cages. A pavilion somewhere around there, a potential community room with restrooms in it as well. That would probably be the location. And then, potentially encircling it a walking trail that gets you to everywhere. As well as stuff like improved lighting. And really an entrance feature. This park is in desperate need of a better entrance feature. Panora, nothing major here. I mean, there are some upgrades we have to do to the facilities that are there, the roofs of all the dugouts, the restrooms need to be renovated, some upgrades to the parking, and maybe some upgrades also to the walking trails. We do have a good amount of land here so that if we ever wanted to do additional bike trails or something like that, it's a possibility as well. And we can, our hope is to get a master plan similar to how I showed you on McCall and Central for all of the parks, a simple master plan with feedback from everybody so that we can come up with something to operate from and so people know what the finished product is going to look like. And Baker really is repave the tennis courts, redo the bathrooms, and redo the entire path around it. And some new fencing front and courthouse. And then Meldrum Park. This was recently added. The county owns this. We mostly maintain it, although it's technically run by the Meldrum Civic Club, but we own the property. And so my thought is to simply reach out to them and say, hey, what do you say the county just comes in there and since we're mowing the lawns and maintaining the playground and stuff like that, we just take care of everything, renovate the basketball courts. It would be a very cost-effective and small upgrade to get this back into shape. Atlas Reservoir, not knowing where we are, we're still in the process of figuring out some of the details on the bid spec with regards to the waste material. But if it goes the route of, let's say, a park, then one of the things we're obviously going to need is a master plan, but also we're going to need to start taking a look at acquiring some right-of-way in some of the more tight areas around the park. You know, kind of like right in here, just to give us a little bit more of a buffer if we wanted to put a walking trail around it for some of these properties. And then this is the additional stuff. This is, you know, kind of somewhat undefined, but road projects that are traditionally part of SPLOST. I know we have a T-SPLOST now, but do we want to talk also about, you know, putting some money aside within the SPLOST for additional roads? The corner needs a morgue in general, but a mobile morgue would be adequate for them. You can simply park it at the new fire headquarters, and if there was a mass casualty event, he can bring it with him on his truck. And then county-wide, depending on the building, could be unincorporated or tier 2. They're just general security and safety upgrades that we've got to take into account, like access control, camera systems, that sort of thing.
Well,
So,
one thing I've talked to Tim about, and I don't know how y'all feel, but as far as the road projects go, I just asked if we could at least put a minimal amount. Maybe we do $1 million per district, just because this last SPLOST, I mean, basically what we had in roads, we're using for the parkway, for our shortfall. So I know we've got T-SPLOST and that's great, but just, I felt like we might could still, each one of us, get a couple more projects done if we did that. Just at least have some type of smaller amount.
And if you ask me a constituent, the first thing is always roads. I'd be all for that.
right, so my thought is, I mean, you know, whether it's, you know, so many miles of roads, so many roads, miles per, or a certain dollar amount per district, you know, however you all want to try and make that fit in there, or whether or not you want to put specific road projects in there. Although, I would probably, I mean, it would be listed in the referendum as simply road projects, but, you know, just to get folks to support it, that we're going to, your road missed T-SPLOST, was overlooked at T-SPLOST, you know, we're going to get you on this one.
If you did dollar amount that you could allocate for
Each
what you
district.
needed in that particular district, like I might need turning lanes on one road, while Jenny might need paving on part of her road, rather than just have mileage.
Okay. So with that, and I know it's a lot, and you should have all gotten a printed, they all get a printed copy of it?
No, I think
They're on.
Okay. She'll get you a printed copy of all these.
So we're not planning on using any of the SPLOST for water and sewer structure?
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. And the only reason I didn't do that is simply because of what has taken place with regards to the American Rescue Plan. You know, that potentially, and we'll find out May 10th when the Treasury guidance come out, but that potentially could open up about $10 million in direct allocation to the county for water and sewer.
It's about $8 million just to reprint our current footprint for wastewater.
Right.
And we know that we're going to have industry coming in, we've got to have that designed and built in the next 3 years. So we probably still need to look at a portion of this money. I love recreation too, but it doesn't pay the bills, it creates the bills. So I think if we can create the industry and the business and the commercial, we have the revenues from SPLOST future to do some of these recreation projects. So I want to make sure that our focus is on infrastructure, water, wastewater, roads, those kind of things that brings the revenues that allows us to have good recreation projects.
Well, what you're saying is we're hoping these federal funds
Well, one of the four categories that we can use those federal funds for is water and sewer infrastructure investment. And it's about $12.75 million coming in from the federal government to Effingham County direct. Now, the other categories are things like first responder, like a bonus for, let's say, first responders or some or the folks that were essential. But that's not going to really take up an enormous amount of our allocation. And responding and items that we need to respond to COVID. But even with those, like the new AV system in the courtrooms, right? We're still not talking about a tremendous amount. So that would leave a lion's share of those funds for water and sewer. And if there aren't a lot of things to, if guidance makes it flexible in how we can use it on water and sewer, then that might be a good way to go.
One thing I'd like to see, on our radar at some point is something for the arts. We do a lot of recreational things, but we don't have an auditorium to have any events.
So much that amphitheater.
Yeah, we do wonderful at something like that. We don't have any resource like that around here at all.
They'll do sprinkler. Sprinkler is more steep.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a small venue, and it's a private venue, the county doesn't have anything. It's on a big scale, a lot of places will go to states where we have some other places, but there's nothing here.
The reason I think it's important to stay coast on the drag, this is something we'll put before the citizens. They don't get excited about work projects.
Yeah.
I think you can have a medium and still.
You've got to do a portion of those rec projects, those field-based projects. And honestly, if you put the whole 45 million on rec,
No, we cover with this other fund that's coming. I think it's bad.
Well, Tim, I'm gonna make one comment about the presentation is everything looks great. I mean,
It does, yeah.
it looks, I mean, across the county, good things are gonna happen, but also just want to point out the obvious. We're about to have the Effingham Parkway going on, T-Slots going on. All of this up here is just flossed. And then the day-to-day stuff that goes on. And just want to throw it out there, I mean, I definitely recognize there's a lot going on, and it's very exciting that we're in a place we can talk about all this. But if you get to a point and you feel that, hey, I've got some of these other smaller projects that are bogging me down, I may need to get outside help or something, to help manage or something. I mean, me personally, I don't see that as a sign of weakness, but just know that, I mean, I'm definitely in support of getting outside help and trying to help, because there's a lot going on.
And getting it done quicker,
Yeah.
even if we got to get outside help to do it. And I agree with that because I don't think prices are going down. And particularly with things like water and sewer, with these projects that, there's $10 million of projects that we have coming out that are under design right now. My goal is to get them out to bid as quickly as we can before everyone else starts spending their American Rescue Plan money and the price of water and sewer piping and stuff quadruples. So I agree with you on that. It's always better to spend a little extra money to get it done sooner than try and save money by doing it all in-house.
And didn't we talk about in our January workshop, because we want to do it really quickly so that people would see the resources, not only borrowing money, but we talked about maybe hiring a project manager in this process if we needed to, that would assist him in managing these projects. Because it's going to be hard to manage two SPOS projects,
12
big
million
projects,
water, yeah.
normal projects, water and sewer that we're doing from our other funds that are coming from the feds. But once again, the water and sewer projects are probably up to $30, $40 million that we need over the next 5 to 10 years. So
Right.
10 million is not going to do enough, but it's a start. You just got to prioritize.
Tim, before Jack Hill passed away,
Yes, sir.
Jack and John Burns, they were gonna build some kind of something down here. Whatever come of that? You know about it?
It was funded, and it was going to be at the
Next to Career Academy.
It's a career academy. And I could find out where it stands, but one thought on that.
Well, Jack died after
Yeah.
this came up.
That's
I
right.
haven't heard anything more about it.
But I know it was approved
Yes.
in the Senate, I mean, in the House and the Senate. And so I can find out where it stands. You know, I know there were, I mean, I forget how much money it was, but it was a good chunk of money. And it could be a possibility that if we want to enhance it,
Yeah.
you know, that they've got some plan, but if we want to make it, you know, a little bigger, more grand, you know, the county could use
Well,
spots.
Barr said something on it, that would be a good start. I mean, if we had to add on to what they were gonna build, at least we'd have something.
That's right.
So there was a performance arts.
Yeah.
It was already.
They was fired up about that. Then all of a sudden,
Who we call it? We just called the,
I think Bill Hitchens, he's the one who made the motion on the floor in the House for it. So I think he spearheaded it on the House, and Senator Hill spearheaded it in the Senate. So probably Bill Hitchens would be the one to call.
And I do want to say, just to tag along with what the chairman said, I know it goes before the voters, and we want things, but I think, I don't want to underestimate the voters. Let's show them the need of infrastructure. And I think they'll understand a lot of it too, if we really explain the importance going forward of infrastructure.
You know, I think when you're doing it as percentages like there, it doesn't, you know, it may not seem like, you know, you're taking that much away, right? When you say, you know, we're going to put this amount aside for roads, this percentage aside for water and sewer, but we're still going to use 60% or whatever we have for rec, 10% for rec in this. Here, we got a lot of money for Effingham Parkway, but it would still be a good percentage for public buildings and rec, and so they'll be able to see that.
you know, a lot of things that the folks want, and I see you, Mr. Jack, you want to say, a lot of things that people want are, you know, restaurants and they want recreation, they want the quality of life things. And I think what the commissioner here is saying, that they understand that water and sewer brings the rooftops and brings the businesses, that brings these types of places to our community. And that creates the revenues for the wonderful quality of life.
Right.
Recreation. We got to connect, help them understand those dots.
We can build them, but then we have to have the money to maintain them and staff them, so. It's all gonna play-
Mr. Jack, you want to say something?
Yes, please. Gentlemen, Mr. County Manager, fantastic presentation. You did a great job. Thank you for everything you do for the county. One thing that I'd like to see y'all look into is bathrooms down at the jail down there. We don't get as many now because of the pandemic, but we used to get a gang of kids coming in by buses, and we don't have the facilities for restrooms down there. But if you and the city of Springfield could get together, this would be great. And the other thing that bothers me is, you know, we're going to have a big change in the politics of the redistricting and everything. And I tell you what, it's going to be a busy day for those people at the election office. And please take that into consideration, because it's going to be tough over that. But thank you anyway. And again, gentlemen, thank you for everything y'all do for the county.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for the comments, too. All right, we've got about a minute before our commission meeting starts, and I didn't remember this meeting, so I'm not going to test for it. I apologize, but I'm going to get my computer to come back.
Mention one more thing, you know, maybe since we are getting a lot of business and industrial projects around, more consideration for green space planning in different areas.
Yeah, and I can say, that's one conversation that I think it's great that we started to have. You know, certainly with some of our larger industrial partners, you know, is putting space aside for that as well, because it's difficult for us. Schools run into the same problem. You know, where you need parks is generally the most expensive place to put a park. And so if we can work with our folks on that, I think we'll be in good shape.
If we can, go ahead and take a break and come back. And we can continue this discussion during tonight's time between the commissioners addressing. You may have some notes or thoughts, or we can readdress this. I think that's a pretty brief agenda tonight overall. So we'll have some time to come back and relook at some of these items that you discussed. So let's take about 5 minutes and come back for a little bit.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Because I had pictures, yeah.
Be ready to go now. You just done it.
You don't want to see things, another person's property with a, love. If the city would kind of like partner with us on that, even if they, there's things like agreement to develop. I think it's a great thing.
Well, we can have a discussion, see how that is.
My pleasure. All right.
Huh?
Please.
I hadn't heard you.
Okay, you can have that too.
We went up there. We went there. We tore the walls out of there. You can go in that land, you can see where we got a trench down in the field, and we cut that out. We tore the wall out. We blew it all out of a piece of paper. We cut it 2 feet by concrete, somewhat was this thick.
More fire hose?
We're gonna get a jackhammer, just take the get out of there. Old boy still working.
It's been-
Yeah, did it. I went and helped him.
Spend less money
Cut
on
it like 2 foot wide, all the way to the back of the building. Well,
Listen, the way I look at it is, the more fire trucks you buy, the more fire personnel you have to hire to drive. If you don't buy the fire trucks, you don't need to hire civil.
where did you like the building and everything? You know, some of the here, had men's on one side.
Make sure you keep all
Right,
that.
it's the county.
We got
All
we
the
got
way
nine,
down.
with the drums and everything. Go and look at it. County commissioners. That's one of those.
This is last, this is the last one.
So you think whatever we have.
Anyway, he was over the building and stuff. He said, that's what it all was.
We're not going to
Anyway,
have that number.
he's going up there.
Well, but whatever number we have for the presentation.
Gotta have some to be actual.
So you don't have that there? So we don't have an equipment line on it?
You didn't give them like a project.
I gave them the old
This is the
one.
old one. And that's what I'm saying, I mean, you could keep those same lines if you wanted, but you don't need them out of You should be there, the first part of the meeting, that should be exactly. Tim wouldn't let me sit up here, he was in the county board meeting, that's right now, that's why he gets his
I talked to the East River people yesterday. We have a second up there.
Tim, Rick,
Yes,
we online tonight?
we're on the phone, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to call to order the Effingham County Board of Commissioners meeting this May 4th, 2021, and let the record show that it's 5:09 p.m. Can I ask everyone if they please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance of prayer. Gracious Father, we are so thankful to be together tonight with the men around this table and the men and women in this room, the leaders of this community who have come to seek counsel among each other and your wisdom to make those decisions that be pleasing and a blessing to our constituents. So we pray for your guidance. We pray for your wisdom as we consider the items of business tonight. We thank you for our community. We pray for our law enforcement officers. We pray that you continue to protect and watch over them and all our firefighters and EMS and all those people who serve in our county. We are so appreciative of what you have gifted to us here in this community. And so we say thank you in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're down to item number 4, consideration to resolution to approve the agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, not this agenda in particular, but we need a point of clarification and a note for the record.
Okay.
So the previous agenda items, which consisted of new business number 9 through 14. So the minutes reflect, as accurately noted from the recording, that Commissioner DeLoach made a motion to postpone those items as recommended by the county manager. It was seconded by Vice Chair Burnett. We understand the intent was to withdraw those items, and if I'm incorrect, Commissioner Deloach, please clarify. So just for the minutes' sake, and as a point to note in the record, we would like to note that those items will be removed or withdrawn from the May 18th agenda. They will not be back on that agenda. Is that everyone's understanding?
That is the correct understanding, I believe, because we have some ordinance work to be done before we can consider ordinances. So I think it's best to remove those until we have that. So on the 18th, I was talking with our manager. I believe we're going to try to have a workshop to address some ordinance considerations and how we improve things in the future.
Well, one of the things we wanted to have a workshop on was public hearings, the changes in the public hearing process, and which I don't imagine would take that long to discuss. And at the same time, if we're having a workshop, just bring up the AR conditional zoning items for the non-landfill stuff, and just see which direction to guide staff on that.
The only thing I was firm on was just keeping off the landfill portion. I mean, if y'all want to talk about the other items, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I just didn't want to see the landfill come back on. I'd like to see that particular item stay removed.
Well, some of the other items related to it, some of the changes were related to that item as well, so.
So I think it is the clarification of what people was to withdraw it, because we've got to resolve this public hearing piece of that. So I think you want to do a workshop on that, so we can get understanding, get that approved, set up. I think Lee's working with us on that to make sure we have our public hearings.
That's right. And we'll get them back on the agenda probably in July timeframe or June timeframe.
And between that time, we can have workshops to look at the ARs on the other items. We're going to look at it, make sure it's the way we want to go, slow it down, look at it, and process it. But I think because I think the correct understanding of the board agrees it was a withdrawal of those half a dozen items that we withdrew.
9 through 14.
9 through 14, yeah. Everybody agrees to withdraw those items?
For the record, I wasn't present during that discussion, so
We're
I'll
moving
accuse
them all
myself.
together, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Do you need the action by us to take a vote on that?
No, sir, we just need it spread on the minutes somewhere, because the final agenda from the last meeting and the minutes are going to reflect them being postponed. So we need to note it somewhere in the minutes what has happened and why they're not going to appear back on the May 18th agenda. So we're good, no action.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. No change in the agenda as presented. We have a motion to, resolution to approve the
I'll make a
agenda.
motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second Mr. Kiefer to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. We have our agenda. The minutes, consideration to approve the April 20 of 2021 Commissioner meeting minutes. Now, are these minutes going to have that correction already, or are we going to note that correction with this approval?
We're going to note the correction with the minutes aren't incorrect. They are correct.
Okay.
That is what happened at the meeting.
Oh, I got you.
But, so, because we understand as
So
staff
the
and
next minutes are ready,
commissioners.
you'll clarify the previous minutes.
Correct.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
So there's no corrections or additions to the
No,
minutes.
sir.
You have a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second Mr. Lofer to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And the minutes are approved.
Please note that I recuse.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to note that as well. On the minute. Okay. Public comments, good to have the public tonight. Encourage you to comment on agenda item as it comes up. You can make those comments 2 or 3 minutes. That allows others to speak to an item that might be on our agenda. All the documents for this meeting are located in the clerk's office, and they're also on the Board of Commissioners website. I hope you get a chance to review those and be prepared to express your thoughts at the appropriate time. And with that, we'll move into our consent agenda, or do we have a presentation? I was thinking someone told me that there was a presentation. There's not. I didn't see it on here, but I thought we had one. All right, we'll move to our consent agenda. There are several items. Item number 1 is an agreement. Consideration to approve to renew the intergovernmental agreement with the Ogeechee Judicial Circuit Accountability Court for fiscal year 2022. Item number 2 in the consent agenda is consideration to approve to renew the contract with McDaniel Supply Company for a one-year term for inmate commissary services at the Effingham County Prison. Item number 3 is consideration to approve to accept a grant award from the Petco Foundation. And item number 4 is an agreement, consideration to approve to renew an agreement between the City of Pooler and Effingham County for 1 year for an inmate court detail.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Number 5, agreement, consideration to approve to renew an intergovernmental agreement with the Georgia Department of Public Safety for antenna receiver space on the county tower. Number 6 is an agreement, consideration to approve to renew an intergovernmental agreement between the Effingham County School District, Effingham County, and the Effingham County Sheriff's Office for school resource officers. Now, number 7 is policy change, consideration to approve to revise and publish 6.08 personal appearance of the Effingham County Human Resource Standards Practice. And that's the 7 items. Get a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Loper to approve the agenda, the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it is approved. Thank you. Move into our new business. Item number 1 under new business is a resolution, consideration to approve resolution 21-030, authorizing volunteers and elected officials to be covered by the ACCG Group Self-Insurance Workers' Compensation Fund and for other purposes.
Good evening, Vicki Dunn, HR Director. Yes, sir, this is just replacing the previous resolution in order for the elected officials and some of our other volunteers to be covered under our workers' compensation insurance. We have to have a resolution. This resolution will add our Sheriff's Deputy Reserve officers as well as EMA volunteers that we have that work with our emergency management. Elected officials are already covered under the policy because anybody that gets a paycheck, a 1099 or a W-2, are automatically covered under our workers' comp policy. Staff recommends alternative 1.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve order number 1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Loper, second by Mr. Burdette to approve alternative number 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It carries. Item number 2, policy, consideration to approve and publish 2.26 diversity, equity, and inclusion policy to the Effingham County Human Resource Standards Practice.
Yes, sir. This is a policy, a new policy that we would like to publish that outlines the importance of accepting the differences, different life experiences, knowledge, and unique capabilities our employees bring to the county, and ensuring we recognize those differences and have respectful communication and cooperation between all employees at all levels. The policy has been reviewed by the county attorney and the ACCG HR attorney. Staff recommends alternative 1.
Any questions or discussions? Do you have a motion?
Make a motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Deloach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It's unanimous approval of alternative 1.
Thank you.
Item number 3, budget resolution. Consideration to approve resolution 21-031 to amend the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget.
Good evening, Christy Carpenter, Finance Director. This is a simple budget amendment, just requesting $16,168 from fund balance to replace some playground equipment at 119 Annex. Staff recommends approval, alternative number 1.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve order number 1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Loper, second by Mr. Deloach to approve alternative 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And it carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4 is an MOU, consideration to approve a memorandum of understanding between Effingham County and Georgia High-Low Trail Incorporated related to the Georgia High-Low Trail Comprehensive Master Plan.
Yes, good evening. Allison Bruton, purchasing agent. The vision of the Georgia High-Low Trail is to connect 2 trail projects to form a 250-mile paved off-road multi-use path through small Georgia towns from Athens to Savannah, which will travel through 8 counties for a total of 211 miles. The study is being funded 50% by counties and municipalities and 50% match from private entities. The total estimated cost of the study will be $120,000. The MOU requests Effingham County participate by providing $3,250, and I believe provide a staff member as well to serve on the steering committee. Staff is recommending alternative 1, and we do have a representative here if you have any questions.
Is that gonna be a bicycle trail or a walking trail, or what kind of trail is it going to be?
I believe the plan is for both, correct? Yes.
Hey, I'm Mary Charles Howard. I'm the executive director of the Georgia Highland Trail. It's a paved, multi-use surface, non-motorized. So walk your dog, push your kids in the stroller, get your bike out, just non-motorized.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
So if this could, we do the study, will we be required to fund in the future?
Will you repeat yourself?
Will the county be required to fund our part of it in the future? Is this just?
This plan gives us the strategy on how to move forward. So we need the comprehensive master plan to apply for grant funding. So that's our number 1, is to apply for grant funding. And as y'all know, grant funding comes in all forms and fashions. It could be 100%, it could be 50-50 match, 20% match, and so on.
I don't think it's gonna lock us into it. It gives us an opportunity to consider.
That's right, right. Right, this would give the county a plan to have to move forward with however you would see. So each county of the 8 counties, each county's getting their plan, and then each will move forward in their own way, or we can all move forward in the same way. It's by the municipality's choice.
Do you have an idea about how wide this would be? Would it be like a 6 foot?
Yes, sir. So 12 feet in the city, where you'd have a lot of users. That way that'd give enough room for people to pass both ways. And then when you get in more rural areas, it could go down to smaller. And as far as surface, in the cities, concrete is recommended, but in rural areas, you could go to asphalt. But the intention is for it to be fully paved so that it would be ADA accessible.
This connects Athens and Savannah, correct?
Athens to Savannah, right?
And it's going to come through
Right,
Guyton.
like in Georgia.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so one important thing about this is a all-in proposal to our municipalities. So there's 19 cities and counties involved in this 8-county area. So the 19 is the small towns. And I've been to city council and county commission meetings for about 5 months now. So it is an all-in. So we need each county and each city to be on board for this to move forward. And we are more than 50% in that direction.
Have you had any declines?
We have not. Nothing but positive. Thank you.
We don't want to be the first.
No pressure.
No, that sounds a great thing. There's so much bike riding going on, particularly right now. I think it'd be great. It'd be a lot safer. When I've ridden my bike on the highway and the trucks are buzzing by me, it'd be nice to have a place where you could drive for a lot of miles and enjoy it. Okay, do you have any questions?
Make a motion to approve order number 1.
Motion by Mr. Walker, second by Mr. Burdette, to approve alternative number 1. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 5, contracts. Consideration to approve contract 21-25-002 with APAC Atlantic Incorporated for the Blue Jay and Paul Road realignment.
Yes, sir. April 19th, 2021, Effingham County accepted bids for the Blue Jay and McCall Road realignment project as designed by Parker Engineering. The full tabulation has been provided in your packets, with APAC Atlantic being the lowest responsive bidder at $1,111,588. The submittals have been reviewed by Parker Engineering as well as the Assistant County Manager, and they've all recommended award to APAC Atlantic. So staff is recommending alternative 1.
Came in a bid under estimates, did it?
Yes, sir.
It's good. How much?
I believe the estimate was 1.4, if I'm correct, so there's about $300,000 there.
That's great. We might sometime soon during the workshop where we see it, remind us what the design looks like and how it's going to turn in and so forth.
Wait, I can't hear you.
Remind us how the design, sometime in the workshop.
Uh-huh.
I know that the road curves in, I know it cuts out, but I'd love to go back and just know what some constituents ask what's going on out.
Okay.
Know more about what it's looking like.
Yeah, and I can actually email out each the graphic of it too.
That'd be great. Okay. Any questions? Motion for alternative 1?
Make a motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second, did you make Mr. Floyd, second? Mr. Floyd made a second, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. And it carries. Item number 6, contract, consideration to approve contract 21-105-004 with Southern Silver LLC for the Hodgeville Booster Pump Station construction. These are two projects that I've been waiting on, that Blue Jay and McCall and this pump station. This is great.
Well, I'm so glad I could present these for you. So April 15th, we accepted bids for the booster pump station. It's designed by Thomas and Hutton. The full bid tabulation, again, is provided in your packets, with Southern Civil LLC being the lowest responsive bidder at $1,427,161. The submittals have been reviewed by Thomas and Hutton, and they have recommended award to Southern Civil. So staff is recommending alternative 1.
That's good. I made a note to Tim earlier today to just want to go through that person to check on the contract with engineer. Is it possible that this unit could be mobile by then? I mean, I don't think it rolls around. But when we did the one in Rankin, it was built such a way that we could actually use that pump station, what do you call it? Booster station. You could actually move it if we ever changed our water system when we do our water plan, master plan. Or is it just going to be there forever?
It is not on a trailer for mobility, but it is built on a skid. And so it would be a one-time type of move. It wouldn't be something you'd move around on.
Yeah, just one time, yeah, that's good. That's what we did. That's important because that's a big $1 million investment. And if we get a reservoir or change our water plan, we get it going well, that booster may not be as valuable there as it might be someplace else. It'd be nice to know that.
I assume it's a piece of equipment that could be physically moved.
It is a series of pumps built on a metal skid, and it comes as a component, kind of like a generator would. Of course, it's got to be the right size.
There's a lot of
You
design.
can't just pick it up and plug it in somewhere else.
No, I should have thought that earlier, but I was just thinking it's a big investment. We're looking at other water sources, and 6 years from now, there may be a better place for that booster station. I was thinking. Okay, very good. That's my questions. Any other questions? Motion for alternative 1.
Make a motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Luther for alternative 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 7. Meeting consideration to approve the council of July 6, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting. I wondered about
I
that.
don't know about this.
It's pretty much a formality, most of the serious business of the county has been conducted by that time. It's when families travel with their children who are out on school break.
New budgets in effect.
New budgets in effect, absolutely.
Everybody's been working hard, long, getting the budget through, so you breathe easy.
That's right. Even
One
without
more
time.
holiday before school starts.
That's right.
So there's a lot of support for that. Alternative 1, I assume, is to have that meeting council. Do you have a motion for that?
Make a motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Kiefer. 2 people with children. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And it carries. Sounds good. All right, I believe that concludes our regular scheduled business meeting. We'll see what kind of reports we have from the staff and commission. We'll start with our staff. County Manager.
Yeah, I've got a quick one just to confirm that as of, I believe it was a week ago Friday, that GDOT started the advertisement for the bid of Effingham Parkway. We will close out and we should know the results by, I believe, May 21st.
Exactly.
Do whatever you got to do. Keep your fingers crossed, pray, knock on wood, whatever it takes. Hopefully, and hopefully that the Blue Jay McCall is an indication that that there's a good amount of competition in the region right now for road infrastructure.
That particular bidding on that, that's for the whole loop.
Yep.
We got some of that.
I don't have anything, but are you going to make mention of Wanda's email?
Yeah, well, I was going to actually have a presentation on that.
She-
We had recently won an award with regards to a couple of our AMS workers, but I wanted to actually bring them here in person if I could, potentially at the meeting.
Can you do that May 18th meeting, make
Yeah.
a presentation, have the press here, get pictures and.
All right, it's a great story, so.
Go around the horn. Anything from the other staff or engineers?
No, sir.
Yeah, I have something. I need to talk to Tim. Tim, I got 3 nasty phone calls before I left the house. I didn't talk to any of them.
About what?
I'll drive.
Okay.
They are upset. They told me on the telephone to come and get all that rock and move it out of the way. It's in worse shape than it was when it started yesterday, the day before yesterday. So I'm going down there. I hadn't had time, but I didn't find out until I was getting ready to come here. I didn't talk to anybody because I didn't want to get tied up. I've been late. But anyway, when I leave here, I'm going down there and see what it looks like.
Okay. I mean, we were there, we walked it yesterday. I mean, this is a chip seal treatment on an ash road. And if any of you have seen the finished product on it, it's not an asphalt surface. And so, but I will say one thing about it is immediately after this, there are loose rocks that eventually,
I haven't
fall to
been
the
down
side.
there.
But you'll see it. It's just simply,
And I also want to talk to you. I'm not going to take everybody's time up today. What you do when you have a chip and seal road up till 2 or 3 years ago, we did it like it was supposed to be done. But I'll talk to you.
That's right.
I'm not going to keep everybody here.
Okay.
But I also had phone calls related to that same road that was on mine. Talked about too. I'm gonna go look at it as well.
What road is it, out of curiosity?
It's real close to here, so if you're driving home, you know where Ratchford's office is?
Oh, I know where Highland Point. Yeah,
You remember the pastor Roland Dan came and talked to us about it, and we told him they're fixing to do something to repair it. And chip and seal has some loose rock after it's done, but it shouldn't be like gravel. I want to look, they took it like gravel.
The real chipping, but that's, I'll
Chip and seal, put the emulsion down,
What
put the
real
fine
chip
rock
and
in, and you mash it in, you got some loose rock, but it's not like.
That's right, and you'll see it, it just,
It up anymore. He did it.
it doesn't look like an asphalt road, and I don't know if that's what they were expecting, but I know when they were here, we mentioned we were doing the chip seal treatment of it. And they did the, what was it, 3 layers of emulsion, 3 layers of emulsion, 3 layers of rock, is what we did.
And the more you drive on the chip seal, the better they become.
Keep in mind, we've had 2 straight days of 90+ degrees. This stuff doesn't exactly set up when it's this hot. It takes a while to set up. So once the water evaporates and the emulsification kind of breaks down, it should tighten up. And cooler weather will help with that.
When did they finish it?
Yesterday.
Yesterday? So they really didn't have a chance to let it sit and see what it would do. So we can tell them that once your comments, if it doesn't do well, we'll be back to address it soon.
Yeah, and we could do that, or we could look at, possibly changing how we do chip seal. And, it's one of the things, we can discuss, because we're going to be doing it for a long time. Every year, we're going to be budgeting to constantly do some of these ash roads. If there's things that we can do to make it nice.
I'll tell you about how to do it.
Yeah.
How to do the chip and seal like we've been doing for 15 years, and all this changed when they got this patching job we do today, like we did yesterday. That's a patch, that's not the...
That's right.
Anyway, I'll talk to you about it.
Okay. You got it.
What I'll be concerned about when they look at it, Mr. Reggie, is that probably there's rock in there where they cut the grass, and it's going to affect the lawnmowers because it's probably along the ditch area, the grass area. I'm guessing that's probably the bigger issue. This rock.
It's probably a good example of why we get behind when we have certain weather, and this is a reason you can't force to do it if the weather's not perfect.
We'll look at it, and I'll tell them we're gonna come back and talk about it on the 18th.
That's all I had.
A couple of things to think about,
You gonna go around? Have you got anything?
I was gonna come.
Oh, you got something. Oh, I'm sorry. You cut this off over here. I had a report. Go ahead, bro. You got anything?
You rushing me, you rushing me.
I had a call today for a request if a neighborhood can become golf cart friendly. Some of the like municipalities, I think Springfield, are golf cart friendly. There was an article in the paper recently, they're going to crack down on golf carts. And there's an interest, I mean, there's some people just don't like kids out there on golf carts, but the majority of people are like, leave the kids alone. And if we need to have the HOA or if there's some type of policy where the majority of a neighborhood approves it, they can ride golf carts around the neighborhood. Is there anything that you're
I
aware
look
of?
to see what Springfield did. And
Springfield
maybe you can designate certain roads.
Springfield has got certain roads that you can drive on and they got those signs.
That's right, I saw
You
those.
can't just run all over Springfield with one.
And obviously, we'll run this by our attorney, because I'm sure there's some liability for us if we say a 14, 15-year-old can get out there on a golf cart and they actually have a driver's
And the
license.
sheriff as well.
So
I was going to have a conversation with Jimmy, but I
don't
just,
know either right now, but we probably make sure what,
Yeah, I think they'd have to at least be 16.
yeah, we said we got to be careful injecting.
yeah, I think there's some rules. I'm not going to say this to any kid, but I mean,
Okay,
it's a request.
I got you.
Apparently,
And driving age children.
Apparently Fort Howard's one, because I see them shut across the road to the convenience store from the golf course.
I just want to be careful not injecting ourselves in a golf cart situation that could create some liability for us.
That's all I got. You can go back.
All right, we'll go back, last Chevy first. We need a workshop, gentlemen, I believe. We have one in January. We probably start planning it now. For those of you who have kids in school, we usually like to do it the last of July. Gets us after the budget. So are you agreeable to maybe look at, I don't know if the chambers do anything in July like they do sometimes, but we need to, if you're already coordinating with that, so we can be a part of the chambers meeting and maybe have a couple of days before or after. We have a lot going on. It'd be good to review all these thoughts and plans. Are y'all good for that?
Yeah.
Rather it be in August.
Huh?
I'd rather it be after school starts, it's going to be here.
Usually we go away.
Chambers event is usually in August.
Is it obviously good? Yeah, they could go like to July.
Doesn't matter to me, tell me when, where.
Well, it sounds like,
I'll coordinate with the
It's
chamber.
away, I don't know, kids leaving.
well, another thing too, we could look into August and see if there's a parent-teachers conference that might be, or something that's going on, or Teachers Day, where they have a catch-up day where they go over their plans on that Friday or something. We might could go Thursday and have Friday and Saturday and Sunday together, because we need at least 2 days, and maybe a half to recap. But I think it's really important that we do that. We usually go away, we didn't go away in January only because of COVID. There weren't COVID-friendly places to go. I'll give Brother Lamar, one off the school board, workshop we call COVID, so that's where you can go. But if we can get away, I think we get more done because we don't get pulled by our personal businesses. We can work into the night to do stuff that we need to do to get done. But anyway, everybody came for a workshop in July, August, probably August sounds like it's better for most people.
I'm fine with it.
So if you could work with our clerk on that, and come up with some dates for us, the school calendar, that would be huge, I think. The May 18th, we talked about Tim today, are we going to try to do that as a workshop or as a regular meeting? Because that is our public hearing meeting, to talk about the public hearing changes we might need to do. Do we want to do a workshop at 4:30 on that, so we can go into the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it would be quick beforehand. I mean, if you want to do it, make it safe, 4 o'clock, for being that we'll have a 5 o'clock meeting. And then, if we finish early, there'll just be a little bit of a delay between the workshop and that. But we did want to bring up the issues related to the public hearing. And then if there's time, I'll just bring up briefly the direction we think we are hearing we should go on the commercials, AR commercial.
No, commercial, yeah. So we have time to discuss all that without having to make any decisions, or you come back and do another workshop or whatever. But just so that we need to clean this zoning part up about, when you have public hearings, does it have to go through the zoning board first? And there's a lot of things we just need to know about.
That's right.
We should do it.
We're gonna do it on the 18th. Keep in mind, you have your SPOS meeting with the cities at 11 o'clock that day as well. So you would have the 11 o'clock, and then you have your 4 o'clock, and then the regular meeting.
For me, it's good. I like having all my meetings with the county in one day to get it done.
No, not one day. Like a day.
For me, it's good. I don't know about everybody else. Okay, let's shoot it down the 18th. And one last thing, just came to my mind as I was looking at, well, and the constituent call about all the dirt that's been put on the roads by surface mines, you know. And as I read through the solid waste and read through the ordinance that we had, we were talking about landfills, having them on state highways. Just want to put it out there for our staff and the manager and the board. Maybe we should consider surface mines in the future on the state road too. That might resolve a lot of these roads being torn up on Call, Courthouse, where we have surface mines. I don't know, just think of things. I think of things I want to get them out there so we can think about it. That may be a way we control the damage to our roads and limit in that capacity these 80,000 pounds of dirt and truck on and off the road. One thing to be going down the road, it's another thing to be pulling on it and crushing the sideline as you go. So just think about that as we look at our zone and not put that in there. It makes sense. I don't have anything else. We can wait till the workshop to talk about anything else I didn't know. Staff has anything for us tonight? Do we have a need for executive session?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The executive session minutes for the April 20th meeting. Do we have this?
Yes, sir. It doesn't matter.
Oh.
Today is my wife's birthday. She'll be happy that we're getting done. It's a clean glass.
Go ahead and write that, Mike. Just the full.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
No, staff, no.
We got a motion from Mr. Deloach to approve executive session minutes as presented. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Burdette. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Step
no.
back, I give back the step.
No, Mr. Tinker's abstaining.
Bounce them back, and I give them back the step.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lopez, second, Mr. Burdette, to adjourn this meeting. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. Mr.